Zoe Johnson's first memory of Manhattan was the color gray, not the cold, hard gray of steel and skyscrapers, but a softer one, the kind that smudged the city sky at sunrise and coated the sidewalks just after rain. She learned quickly how to move through that city like a shadow, head down, steps quick, hands calloused from work that no one really noticed. But today, as she wheeled her cart into the marbled lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel, the light was almost golden. She didn't pause to admire it. Zoe had rules, and rule number 1 was never linger where you can be seen and ignored at the same time. The hotel was waking up. Laughter from the breakfast lounge drifted under the lobby's glass chandeliers. Receptionists typed behind marble counters, their voices crisp as pressed linen. Guests drifted in, trailing suitcases and accents from everywhere. In her navy uniform, Zoe was nearly invisible, which was how most people liked it. She paused at the edge of the Persian rug and bent to pick up a candy wrapper, her mind already running through her checklist. 15 rooms on the 8th floor, a conference suite, and the lobby restrooms before noon. Then there was Mrs. Patel's request for extra towels, and her phone vibrated in her pocket. She froze. Phones were forbidden during cleaning hours. Manager Richards had a way of appearing exactly when you forgot that. Zoe glanced at the number. Her heart did a little somersault. Amsterdam. She looked over her shoulder. The front desk was distracted by a guest with a barking Pomeranian, slipped behind a marble column and answered, voice barely above a whisper. "Hello? Soy Johnson." A pause, then a warm voice in Dutch. "Mevrouw Johnson. Dit is Professor van Than van de Universiteit van Amsterdam." Her heart raced. For a moment, the lobby faded away. She responded in flawless Dutch, and the conversation spun out. Scholarship forms, application status, the missing motivation letter. "Mijn motivational brief was tailored," Zoe explained, stress sharpening her vowels. She was so engrossed she didn't notice the sudden silence behind her until the professor's voice stopped. She looked up. 2 figures stared at her across the marble. Manager Richards, lips pinched, arms folded. Next to her, a tall man in a suit. Richard Coleman, the hotel's elusive owner. His gaze was sharp, curious, almost amused. Around them, the lobby seemed to hold its breath. Zoe's mind raced. She stumbled through a goodbye in Dutch, Ikebale, later to Rip Totsiens. She hung up, tucking the phone deep in her pocket. Richard's voice was cold and precise. "Johnson, my office." Now she didn't protest. Zoe followed Richards through the staff hallway, every step echoing. She felt the stares and pitying, others smug from colleagues. She was the only black woman on the cleaning crew with a degree, something Richards never acknowledged except to remind her how little it mattered. Richards shut the office door hard enough to rattle the file cabinets. "You know the rules, Johnson. No phones on shift, especially not in the lobby." And what was that? French? Dutch? Zoe replied, cursing herself for answering. "I don't care if it was Martian. What matters is that Mr. Coleman saw you." A cleaning lady, on the phone, ignoring her duties. In public, the injustice burned. She'd seen the white receptionists chat on the phone for ages, giggling about weekend plans, while Richard smiled indulgently. But Zoe just stared at the scuffed linoleum, knowing this fight was unwinnable. Richards went on. "You're on convention center bathrooms for the next 3 months. No overtime. Maybe you'll have time to practice your languages there without embarrassing the hotel." Zoe's mouth was dry. That meant late shifts, twice the work, no extra pay. She nodded, jaw clenched, and left before Richards could see the shine in her eyes. That night, Zoe sat on her narrow bed in the apartment she shared with 2 nurses from Jamaica. The city's hum seeped through the window. Her linguistics, diplomas, Georgetown hung on a wall that peeled at the corners. 6 years scrubbing floors, saving every penny for grad school, sending resumes into the void. She thought about calling her mother in Atlanta, but couldn't bear the disappointment in her own voice. She cried quietly, wiping her face with the edge of her sleeve. The next morning, she woke before dawn, determined to hold her head high. She tied her braids back, ironed her uniform, and stepped into the city's grey light. If they wanted to break her, they'd have to try harder. The Grand Plaza buzzed with the tension of a coming storm. As she emptied trash bins near the elevators, Jennifer, the head receptionist, called out, "Zoe Johnson, HR wants you upstairs." Now, Zoe blinked. HR was on the 32nd floor, up with the executives and views of Central Park. She'd never set foot there, except to clean the restrooms. She smoothed her uniform and took the elevator, surrounded by suits who didn't acknowledge her existence. The HR director, a brisk woman with steel-grey hair, gestured for her to sit. Zoe sat, spine rigid. Her mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Was this it? Fired. The door opened. Richard Coleman stepped in, tall and calm, with a folder in his hands. "Ms. Johnson," he said, voice even, "I'd like a word." Zoe's throat went dry. Coleman opened the folder, eyes skimming the pages. "Dutch, French, Italian, Mandarin, correct?" She blinked. "Yes, sir. Honors degree in linguistics. Georgetown, 6 languages. Cleaning my hotel for 6 years. Why?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the city outside. Zoe glanced at the HR director, who watched in silence. "I applied for 47 jobs here," she said quietly, all ignored. "I tried to transfer 12 times, always denied, by Manager Richards and Mr. Whitmore." Coleman nodded, making notes. His face was unreadable. "Curious," he murmured. "Whitmore complains about lack of multilingual staff for our international clients, especially Asian conferences." Zoe couldn't help the flicker of anger in her voice. "There are qualified people right under your nose. They just never get the chance." Coleman leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I'll be blunt. Tomorrow we host a major trade conference. Dutch and Chinese executives. I need someone who speaks both languages and understands the cultures. Are you available?" Zoe blinked, uncertain. "You want me to clean their rooms?" He smiled, a quick, genuine smile. "No, Ms. Johnson. I want you to coordinate international relations for the event temporarily. Salary, $5,000 a week, starting today." It took everything in Zoe not to let her jaw drop. "Why me?" she asked quietly. Coleman's eyes met hers. "Because I heard you speak Dutch like a native. Because you have the qualifications I need. And because I suspect there's something very wrong going on in my company." He stood. "Talk to HR about paperwork. You start now." Zoe stood, legs almost shaking, and left the room. The elevator ride down felt unreal. Her new badge was heavy in her hand as she stepped out on the staff floor. Richards appeared, eyes narrowing. "Johnson, what are you doing here without a uniform?" Zoe met her gaze, steady, working. "Ms. Richards, International Relations Coordinator, at Mr. Coleman's request." Richards's mouth opened and closed, speechless. Zoe didn't stop. She felt her world tilt, the invisible doors cracking open at last. She'd spent years being unseen today. She was stepping into the light. Zoe Johnson walked back into the convention center's staff hallway, feeling the weight of 100 invisible eyes. News of her sudden promotion spread like electricity, racing through every corridor and break room. By the time she returned to her old cleaning closet now, she realized no longer her responsibility as someone had scribbled show-off in pen across her locker door. She stopped, staring at it, heart pounding not with anger but a strange, almost giddy disbelief. If only they knew how many times she'd wanted to quit. How often she'd bitten her tongue when Richard's voice curled through the radio. "Johnson, get up here, now." How many years she'd spent on the outside looking in, just waiting for one open door. She wiped the graffiti with the heel of her hand, watching the word blur and vanish. She wasn't going back. Not now. As she walked toward the HR office, her phone buzzed again, the same Amsterdam number. She stepped into an empty stairwell, the sound muffled by thick concrete. "Professor Van Hito," she answered in Dutch, voice soft but certain. "Zoe, I wanted to let you know we've found your motivation letter. There was a mix-up in the admissions office, but you are now shortlisted. The selection committee will be in touch soon." Zoe exhaled, relief and excitement fighting for space in her chest. "Thank you, Riali. Thank you so much. Your credentials speak for themselves." "Ms. Johnson," the professor replied, tone almost proud. "I hope the Grand Plaza realizes what they have. If only," she thought. She ended the call, tucking her phone away, and tried to steady herself. For the first time in years, a new horizon seemed possible. But that hope was fragile. She knew too well how easily it could be shattered. A sharp voice echoed down the hallway. "Johnson." Richards. Her posture stiffened. Richards stood at the end of the corridor, clipboard clutched like a weapon, still making personal calls on company time. Some people never learn. Zoe faced her, letting the tension settle. "I had urgent business. It's handled. That's not your decision to make." Richards's lips twisted. You think you're special now. 1 week of playing translator, and suddenly you're above the rules. Zoe's jaw clenched. I'm following instructions from Mr. Coleman. If you have an issue, maybe you should take it up with him. A dangerous silence. Don't test me, Johnson, Richards snapped, voice low. You may have fooled Coleman for now, but you're still staff. You'll never fit in up there. Zoe held her ground, eyes leveled with Richards. Maybe you're right, but I'm not going anywhere. Richards stepped closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. You people always think you're owed something. Let me remind you, the only reason you're here is because someone else failed. Don't get comfortable. Zoe felt the words like a slap, heat prickling her cheeks. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, to say all the things she'd swallowed over the years, but she saw the triumph in Richard's eyes, the satisfaction of drawing blood. Zoe said nothing, just turned and walked away. As she did, Richards called after her. Don't forget, the higher you climb, the harder the fall. Later that morning, Zoe entered her new office, a small, windowless room next to the executive suites, but to her, it felt palatial. There was even a desk with her name on a plastic plaque. Zoe Johnson, International Relations Coordinator, sat, letting her mind wander. 6 years ago, she'd started in this building, full of ambition, ready to build a career. Now, every step forward came with an echo of doubt. Was this real? Would it last? Her computer pinged. An email from HR. Meeting with Mr. Coleman, 10 a.m. sharp, conference room 3B. She straightened her blazer, borrowed from her roommate for good luck, and made her way to the conference floor. The doors were heavy, and the carpet muffled every footstep. As she reached room 3B, the door opened, and Coleman stood there, gesturing her in. Inside, the walls were glass, sunlight spilling over a long table. Coleman sat at the head, a leather folder open in front of him. Ms. Johnson, he said, tone neutral, please have a seat. Zoe did, hands clasped tight in her lap. Coleman looked up, eyes sharp but not unkind. Do you know why I asked for this meeting? She hesitated. You want to talk about the conference, my new responsibilities? Coleman nodded. That's part of it, but first I want to hear your story, not your resume, the truth. Why? With your education, your credentials, your fluency in 6 languages, were you cleaning bathrooms here for 6 years? Zoe paused. Was this a trap? She took a breath, deciding there was no point in lies. I came to New York after Georgetown. I thought I'd be snapped up international organizations, consulates, hotels. I applied everywhere. Most never replied. The few interviews I got, once they saw me, well, the answer was always the same. We'll call you. They never did. She glanced up, meeting Coleman's gaze. When I applied to Grand Plaza, they offered housekeeping. I thought, fine, get my foot in the door, prove myself. I worked hard, never missed a shift. I sent applications for every open position that matched my skills: front desk, guest relations, translation. I never even got an interview. Coleman's expression darkened. Who rejected you? Manager Richards, Director Whitmore. Every time. No explanation, just silence. Once, I overheard Richards say I wasn't the right fit for the face of the hotel. Coleman leaned back, steepling his fingers. Did you ever file a formal complaint? Zoe shook her head. And go against my managers? I needed the job. I had student loans. My mother's health, she needed help back home. And anyway, who would listen? The only black woman in the department, accusing senior management. A silence grew between them, heavy with unspoken history. Coleman closed the folder, but kept his eyes on Zoe. Do you know why I noticed you yesterday? Zoe shook her head. Because I've spent the last 3 months hiring consultants to figure out why talented staff keep leaving my hotels. Turnover is sky high for qualified minority employees. I wanted to know why. Your file came up, repeatedly overqualified, overlooked, ignored. Your name was on a list of internal applicants, denied more than 10 times, no reasons given. I asked HR for the files. I heard you speaking Dutch. Then I watched Richard's face. Zoe's anger surged. It's not just me, there are others. I've seen them: black and Latino employees, Asian women, anyone who doesn't fit a certain mold. We get the worst shifts, the lowest pay, no opportunities, and if we complain, we're problematic or ungrateful. But if we stay quiet, nothing changes. Coleman's voice was soft but edged. That ends now, at least in my hotels. He tapped the folder. From now on, you report directly. To me, for all conference matters, if you see or experience anything else like this, you come to me, no matter what. Understood? Zoe nodded, barely believing it. One more thing, Coleman said, leaning forward. You have my support, but you'll also be under scrutiny. Whitmore and Richards won't like this. Be careful. Document everything. If anyone retaliates, tell me. He stood, offering his hand. Welcome to the Rio Grande Plaza, Ms. Johnson. She shook his hand, her grip firm. As she left the room, a quiet satisfaction bloomed in her chest. Maybe things were about to change. The next few days were a blur. Zoe juggled translation requests, guest logistics, and endless meetings. Some staff avoided her, others whispered as she passed. She found comfort in small moments, a smile from the new receptionist, a thank you from a Dutch guest, the voice of her mother on the phone. But the pushback came swiftly. In the staff cafeteria, Whitmore approached, smile tight as a knot. Ms. Johnson, he said, voice dripping with condescension. I see you're making quite a name for yourself. She looked up from her tea. Just doing my job. Oh, of course, you've certainly made an impression on Mr. Coleman. But let me give you some advice, don't overstep. This hotel has a way of sorting out who belongs and who doesn't. Zoe smiled politely. Thank you for your concern. I'll keep that in mind. Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but he moved on. After lunch, Zoe returned to her office to find an anonymous note taped to her chair. Go back to the laundry room, where you belong. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. She took a photo and sent it to herself, then shredded the note. She would not be intimidated. That evening, as she prepared translations for the upcoming conference, Zoe's new ally, Zoe Williams from HR, knocked and stepped in quietly. I've been following your file since I started here, Williams said, voice low. You should have been promoted years ago. I tried raising it with Whitmore. He shut me down. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. Why are you telling me this? Williams hesitated, then smiled. Because I'm tired of seeing talent wasted. And because if you ever want backup, you have it in me. For the first time, Zoe felt hope warming her chest. On the morning of the international conference, Zoe stood by the front desk, greeting guests in Dutch and Mandarin, helping sort out last-minute glitches. She caught glimpses of Richards watching. From a distance, arms folded, lips white with tension. Whitmore pretended not to see her at all. She focused on her work, letting her language skills shine. She corrected seating charts, rescued a nearly lost suitcase, and even caught an error in a VIP's allergy alert before disaster struck. The Dutch trade delegation seemed especially pleased with her attention to detail. At lunch, she received an email. Meet me in my office, Coleman. She made her way up, nerves buzzing. Inside, Coleman gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. You're doing excellent work, he said. The Dutch and Chinese delegates are raving about you. But that's not why I called you up here. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of her transfer applications, all marked denied, with initials from both Richards and Whitmore. I want you to look at these. Tell me, do you recognize any patterns? Zoe studied them. Dates, times, reasons left blank. She looked up. Every single one was blocked by either Richards or Whitmore, sometimes both. They never even interviewed me. Coleman nodded. You see why this concerns me, especially since, in parallel, Whitmore's been signing off on contracts with a translation company run by his niece, someone with questionable credentials. Zoe's heart hammered. That explains the bad translations for last year's conference. They nearly cost us a major account. Coleman's jaw tightened. I need evidence. If you can help me build a case, we can clean house. Otherwise, this stays in the shadows. Zoe met his gaze, determination igniting in her. I'll find what you need. He smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing for the first time. I knew you would. Just be careful, Miss Johnson. There are people here who'd do anything to keep things the way they are. She left the office, mind racing, pulse alive with a mix of fear and resolve. For the first time, Zoe Johnson felt she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. When Zoe woke that morning, New York was still blue and silent outside her window. She stood at the kitchen sink, fingers tight around a chipped mug, watching the sky pale through the fire escape. The apartment was still. Her roommates had already left for early shifts at the hospital. Today, the Grand Plaza would fill with the sound of a dozen languages, the sharp click of polished shoes, the laughter and disputes of people who moved millions with a handshake, and Zoe Johnson, the invisible, would be at the center of it all. She dressed carefully, not her old uniform, but a tailored navy blazer borrowed from her friend's closet, her own pressed slacks, a white blouse with the faintest blue pinstripes. She checked a new ID badge, her own name, a new title. She ran a hand over her braids, clipped on small gold earrings, and forced herself to smile in the mirror. The subway ride was a blur. She practiced her Mandarin phrases under her breath, then switched to Dutch, lips shaping every consonant perfectly. Her mind replayed Coleman's words, "You have my support, but be careful," and Zoe Williams' quiet encouragement, "If you ever need backup, you have it in me." At the hotel, a storm of activity was already brewing. Outside, limousines queued at the curb, drivers holding placards in Chinese and Dutch. In the lobby, bellboys darted between VIPs. At the far end, a cluster of European executives in sharp suits were arguing in their own language. Zoe entered with steady steps, pausing just inside the gleaming doors. The first obstacle was the stairs, some open, some sidelong, some flatly. Disbelieving, a black woman with a new badge and no cleaning cart. The old guard Richards among them eyed her with naked skepticism. A few of the receptionists offered nervous, fleeting smiles. But when Zoe strode straight to the front desk and greeted a Dutch guest in their own tongue, heads turned. "Godmorgen, welcome Beach, Grand Plaza. Can I you helpen met, you kamer?" The guest blinked in surprise, then grinned. "Perfect Dutch. My, you're a rare find in New York." From the conference center came the voices of Mandarin speakers. Zoe glided between both worlds, switching tongues, smoothing crises, tracking down lost luggage, double-checking dietary restrictions, correcting the seating chart after a junior assistant swapped to rival CEOs by mistake. Richard stalked through the lobby, her gaze sharp as ice. Whitmore was nowhere to be seen. After 2 hours, Zoe paused to breathe in the hidden corner behind the reception. Her phone buzzed. A text from Zoe Williams. "Need to talk. Meet me in the file room. Urgent. Zoe slipped through the staff doors, heart thudding. The file room was small, lined with shelves of paperwork that smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish. Williams was waiting, hands trembling as she held up a stack of folders. "I've been digging," she whispered. "Look at this." Zoe opened the first folder, translation contracts from the past 3 years. She scanned the names. Whitmore Translations, LLC. She flipped the page. Owner Ashley Whitmore, his niece. Williams nodded, eyes fierce. "It gets worse. Look at the rates. They've been charging triple the standard market price. And every year, they're the only company awarded the contractor competitive bids." Zoe's pulse quickened. She read further. "Invoices marked urgent, signed off without oversight. And look here," Williams said, opening another folder. "Every transfer application from minority employees denied by Richards or Whitmore. There's a pattern, Zoe. Systematic exclusion. It's more than just you." Zoe swallowed. "We need proof that the translations are actually substandard." Williams smiled, pulling out a thin envelope. "I anticipated that. I emailed a few samples to a professor at NYU who specializes in Mandarin business communications. She replied this morning." She handed Zoe a printed email. The professor's comments were blunt. Several translations contained severe errors. Some terms would be deeply offensive in a corporate context. Using these in negotiations could damage relationships or result in legal misunderstandings. Zoe felt a cold fury. "This could cost the hotel millions," she said. Williams nodded grimly. "And people like us lose opportunities while family gets rich. You have Coleman's ear, Zoe. We have to bring him this." Zoe slid the documents into her portfolio. "Tonight, after the opening banquet, I want to watch Whitmore's reaction when I fix his niece's meslive." The afternoon flew by in a rush. Zoe managed a dozen crises, a Dutch delegate's luggage lost at JFK, a Chinese executive's vegan lunch swapped for steak, a schedule change that nearly put the keynote speaker in the wrong room. Each time, she handled it with calm and precision, her languages opening doors that others couldn't. The banquet hall sparkled. Gold and crystal reflected 100 faces, some friendly, some skeptical, a few outright hostile. Zoe moved among the tables, checking place cards and greeting guests. Whitmore arrived late, accompanied by a slender, nervous-looking young woman, Ashley no doubt. Zoe caught snippets of their conversation as they passed. "Just stick to the script. Whitmore muttered. Smile, say thank you. No one reads those contracts anyway. Ashley nodded, face pale. The keynote speaker, a renowned Dutch businessman, took the stage. As he began, Zoe noticed a commotion at the VIP table. 2 Chinese guests were reading the event program with growing discomfort. One stood quietly approaching Zoe. Miss Johnson, he said in careful English, may I ask who wrote these? Mandarin materials. Zoe glanced at the folder. Is there a problem? The executive held out the page, pointing to a phrase. This is a term for family gatherings, not business. Here, you say small profit and thin harvest instead of mutual prosperity. And here, this phrase is almost rude. Zoe apologized in fluent Mandarin, bowing slightly. Thank you for pointing this out. I'll make sure it's corrected before tomorrow's negotiations. The man blinked, then smiled. You speak very well. I hope you are the one handling our contract tomorrow. Zoe nodded, making a note dot at the edge of the room. She saw Whitmore frown. Watching her, she returned to the staff area, scanned the digital files, and quickly corrected every error. She drafted a revised welcome letter and program, running the language through a trusted online platform and double-checking it with a colleague at nyu.fen. As the guests lingered over dessert, she printed the new materials and quietly distributed them to the Chinese and Dutch tables. Within minutes, she felt a shift, smiles, nods, and quiet words of thanks. Whitmore cornered her as she returned to the kitchen. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed. Fixing your niece's mistakes, Zoe replied, keeping her voice level. You almost started an international incident. Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but he forced a smile as 2 Dutch delegates approached. Miss Johnson, may we speak with you? One asked. We just wanted to thank you for your professionalism. We were surprised to see your name. Weren't you the author of that article on linguistic variation in international business? The one published in the Journal of Applied Linguistics? Zoe blinked, stunned. Yes, that was a few years ago. The man clapped her on the back. Brilliant work. I've cited you at 2 conferences. You belong in our world, not behind a broom. Whitmore's smile froze as he realized the conversation was happening in front of half the executive staff. Other guests soon joined, congratulating Zoe, exchanging business cards, and offering future opportunities. Zoe felt dizzy, almost out of her own body. When she finally found a moment alone, Zoe Williams was waiting with a hug and a file. You did it. They can't deny you now, Williams whispered. Zoe hugged her back. Tomorrow, we go to Coleman with everything. No more secrets. That night, Zoe sat at her desk, reviewing the evidence. The weight of the day pressed down on her sexes, stress, fear, hope. She called her mother, voice trembling. Mama, I think things are finally changing. Her mother's answer was soft but proud. Keep your head high, baby. Don't let anyone steal your light. As she hung up, Zoe glanced at the framed diploma on her desk, then at the new stack of business cards, international numbers scrawled on their backs. For the first time, the future felt possible. She opened an email draft to Coleman and attached the evidence file. Her subject line was simple: urgent, systemic discrimination and corruption. Proof enclosed before she hit send. She looked out the window at the city. The grey was gone, replaced by 1,000 points of light. Tomorrow, she would walk into battle. Morning arrived, sharp and cold. Zoe stood on the edge of the Grand Plaza's main lobby, feeling the pulse of the city through the glass. Her fingers clutched the folder she and Zoe Williams had assembled, a damning collection of contracts, emails, denials, and external assessments, the kind of evidence that could blow a hole in the gleaming farkaday of any institution. She checked her watch. 30 minutes until the emergency executive meeting. Williams met her by the elevators, file box in hand. You ready? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Zoe smiled, steady and quiet. We've waited years for this. On the top floor, the conference room's frosted glass walls hummed with tension. Executives filtered in, some curious, some suspicious, a few barely awake. The staff had been summoned with little notice. Even the hotel's legal counsel sat at the far end, a nervous smile frozen on her face. Richards entered briskly, jaw set, eyes hard. Whitmore arrived moments later, red-faced, muttering to Ashley, who looked as if she'd rather be anywhere else. Richard Coleman stood at the window, silhouetted against the skyline, arms crossed. As the last department head took their seat, he turned. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have urgent matters to discuss. Please, be seated." The room quieted. Coleman gestured to Zoe and Williams. "Ms. Johnson, Ms. Williams, the floor is yours." Zoe's mouth was dry. She looked at Williams, who gave her a nod of encouragement. She stepped forward, voice even but firm. "Thank you, Mr. Coleman. I appreciate the opportunity to address this group. What I'm about to share concerns not just my own experience, but the professional lives of many others in this hotel." She clicked her laptop. The projector screen flickered to life, displaying charts and lists, hiring data, rejected transfer applications, the dizzying sums of inflated translation contracts. Williams spoke next, her tone cool and precise. "For the past 3 years, the Grand Plaza has consistently denied transfer and promotion requests from highly qualified minority employees. We have records of 38 such denials, all signed off by Manager Richards or Director Whitmore. In parallel, every translation contract has gone to a company owned by Mr. Whitmore's niece, at rates far above industry standard." She advanced the slides, side-by-side comparisons, anonymous testimonies, expert reviews of translation quality. Murmurs rippled through the room. Zoe took over. "These translation errors nearly cost us 2 major international contracts. Multiple experts have confirmed that the mistakes were not only unprofessional but damaging to our reputation. Meanwhile, dozens of staff with the skills to handle these assignments were overlooked, myself included." She let the silence stretch, then spoke plainly. "What happened to me is not unique. It's a pattern of institutional bias and favoritism that hurts this hotel, its reputation, and its bottom line." Coleman's voice broke the hush. "Director Whitmore, Manager Richards, would you like to respond?" Whitmore shot to his feet. "This is preposterous. My niece is a certified translator. We followed protocol." Zoe raised her hand, cutting him off, eyes never leaving his. "We contacted Peking University. They have no record of her certification. In fact, the email address she listed is fake." Whitmore's face drained of color. "That's a lie. This is a setup." Richard stood too, voice sharp. "She's twisting the facts. Zoe was never a good fit for guest-facing roles. We made decisions for the good of the hotel." Williams met her gaze, calm and lethal. "Yet your files are full of glowing reviews for Zoe's work. There are no complaints, no warnings, only promotions denied without cause. And it's not just her. We have dozens of examples." One of the legal team cleared her throat. "Excuse me, but the volume of evidence is substantial. We may have legal exposure if this is not addressed immediately." Coleman's face was stone. "Mr. Whitmore, Ms. Richards, you are both suspended, effective immediately, pending an independent audit. Security will escort you from the premises. After this meeting, any interference with the investigation will result in termination for cause." Gasps rose from the staff. Richard's expression twisted in shock. Whitmore tried to speak, but no sound came. Coleman continued. "We are also announcing a full review of all hiring and contracting decisions over the past 5 years. I have retained outside counsel and compliance experts. Anyone with knowledge of or involvement in these practices should come forward now. Anonymity will be protected." A wave of energy swept through the room. Fear, hope, relief. Coleman turned back to Zoe and Williams. "As for you two, you have not only protected this company, but have set the standard for what Grand Plaza must become. Ms. Williams, you will lead our new recruitment and diversity audit. Ms. Johnson, effective immediately, you are promoted to Global Director of Internal Communications and Multilingual Operations. Your charge: identify, promote, and empower every qualified employee who's been overlooked." For a moment, Zoe couldn't breathe. Applause began at the back, hesitant at first, then rolling forward as staff rose to their feet. The cleaning crew, her old team, cheered loudest, many with tears in their eyes. Coleman raised his hands for silence. "This is not the end, it's the beginning. The Grand Plaza will set a new standard, not only for hospitality, but for fairness. I expect everyone here to play a part. Those unwilling to change, your time here is over." Whitmore and Richards were led from the room, their protests drowned by the swell of voices. Coleman took Zoe's hand in a firm shake. "You did this, Ms. Johnson, never forget it." The news swept through the hotel like a cleansing wind. In the days that followed, whispers gave way to open conversations in the break room and kitchen. Long-ignored staff emerged from the shadows: line cooks, who spoke 3 languages, a bellman with a degree in computer science, a night auditor who'd been an accountant in her home country. Applications for promotion flooded HR. Zoe moved through the hallways with a new authority. The gold badge on her lapel drew respectful nods. A young Latina maid stopped her in the staff elevator. "Miss Johnson, thank you for all of us." Zoe smiled, heart swelling. "It's just the beginning. Tell everyone the doors are open." She worked late into the night, compiling lists of overlooked employees, meeting with department heads, writing new policies for transparent hiring and promotions. Williams became her right hand, fiercely defending every new applicant. There were, of course, setbacks. Some old guard managers bristled, muttered about lowering standards and moving too fast. Zoe met each challenge head-on, insisting on evidence, transparency, and respect. One afternoon, as she walked the polished corridors of the executive floor, she saw Ashley Whitmore waiting by the elevators, head bowed, clutching a thin envelope. Ashley looked up, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, I never wanted this. My uncle said it was just a formality. I thought I'd learn on the job." But Zoe listened, softening. "I believe in second chances, Ashley, but you have to earn trust. It won't be easy." Ashley nodded, brushing away tears. "I'll try. Thank you." Zoe left her with a promise to connect her with the Coleman Foundation's language scholarship program if she truly committed to learning. The change was immediate and real. Guests noticed the shift in service, the new faces at the front desk, the languages spoken with confidence and warmth. Reviews on travel sites improved, and for the first time in years, the hotel's staff turnover plummeted. Coleman called Zoe to his office a week later, his manner less formal. "How does it feel?" he asked, pouring 2 cups of tea. Zoe sipped, reflecting. "Overwhelming, liberating, like the city looks different now, but there's so much work ahead." Coleman smiled, raising his cup. "To work worth doing, and to the people who finally get the chance to do it." They toasted, and Zoe felt the moment settle in her bones, a turning point. A weight lifted. On her way home that night, Zoe paused on the steps of the hotel. The city glowed with the promise of something new, the air fresher, the sky wide open. She dialed her mother and waited, listening to the ring. "Mama, it happened." They listened. "Things are changing." Her mother's laughter was like music, soft and bright. "I told you, baby, they can't keep you down forever." Zoe let the city's rhythm carry her, hope blossoming in every step. Tomorrow, the work would continue, but tonight, for the first time, she let herself dream wide awake, the whole city at her feet. 6 months later, spring came early to Manhattan, and the Grand Plaza Hotel was almost unrecognizable. The marble lobby was filled with new energy. Staff moved with heads held high, conversations in Spanish, Tagalog, and Mandarin echoing against the high ceilings. The change was so palpable that even the oldest doorman, who had watched 3 decades of guests sweep through those doors, stopped one morning to say, "Feels like a whole new place, Ms. Johnson." Zoe paused in the lobby, a folder tucked under her arm, her phone vibrating with the rhythm of another busy day. She smiled at the doorman, then at Jennifer, the former head receptionist who now managed the international guest relations team. Jennifer nodded back, confidence in her stride, her voice switching easily between English and French, as she welcomed a family from Paris. Zoe remembered what it felt like to walk through this space unseen, her uniform like a cloak of invisibility. Now, every step she took was a reminder not only to herself, but to everyone watching that the old rules had changed. The first act of her new role as Global Director of Internal Communications and Multilingual Operations was the launch of the Invisible Talents Program. The name alone sent ripples through the staff. Some met it with hope, some with skepticism, but Zoe insisted on transparency and speed. Williams, now the Director of Diversity and Recruitment, ran the first round of internal assessments. Staff from all departments, housekeeping, maintenance, the kitchen, even night security, were invited to confidentially submit their qualifications, language skills, and career aspirations. For many, it was the first time anyone had ever asked. Within 2 weeks, Williams' office overflowed with responses. Zoe spent late nights sifting through them, astonished at the hidden expertise. A sous chef who'd been a manager at a 5-star hotel in São Paulo, a bellhop fluent in Russian and German, a maid with a degree in information systems. Even the IT tech who fixed the Wi-Fi had a master's in mathematics from Mumbai. Zoe organized panels of department heads to review the candidates, making sure every meeting included people from multiple backgrounds. Promotions were swift and public. Each new appointment was announced at the staff meetings. No more backroom deals or silent rejections. The impact was immediate. Guests praised the warmth and efficiency of the staff. TripAdvisor ratings soared. For the first time in years, employee turnover plummeted. The conference bookings doubled as word spread about the hotel's new international reach. Zoe's own days were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, interviews with trade magazines, and private moments of reflection. Her new office on the 32nd floor overlooked the city just beyond the skyline. She could almost see the apartment where she used to iron her uniform and dream of something better. One afternoon, as Zoe prepared a speech for the next Invisible Talents orientation, Williams knocked and entered with a stack of letters. "Fan mail," Williams said with a laugh. "Mostly. This one's from the daughter of a dishwasher in Brooklyn. She says her mum used to cry after every denied promotion, but now she's training to be a supervisor." Zoe took the letter, heart swelling. "That's why we do this." Williams set down another envelope. "You might want to read this one yourself. It's from the Netherlands, University of Amsterdam." Zoe's hands trembled as she opened it. The letterhead was heavy and embossed. She scanned the contents and let out a soft gasp. "What is it?" Williams asked. Zoe's smile was slow and amazed. "They're offering me a position as a visiting professor, guest lectures, and they referenced the hotel's work on diversity as part of their invitation." Williams beamed. "Your international news, Zoe." Downstairs, the hotel staff gathered for a town hall meeting, a new monthly tradition. Coleman stood at the front, grey suit immaculate, face relaxed in a way that was rare in the old days. He cleared his throat. "Today we celebrate 6 months of the Invisible Talents program. We have 57 internal promotions, 18 employees cross-training for new careers, and a record-breaking quarter for guest satisfaction. Most of all, we have a team that reflects the best of New York. Everyone, from everywhere, moving forward together." Applause filled the ballroom. Coleman continued. "All this started with a phone call and someone who dared to answer it. Zoe Johnson, will you come up here?" The applause swelled as Zoe walked to the front. She looked out at faces that, only a year ago, wouldn't have met her eyes. Now, they watched her with pride and anticipation. She spoke simply. "Thank you. I'm not here alone. This is your victory. Every one of you who ever felt invisible, not anymore. And if I have anything to do with it, you never will be again." The room stood as one, applause and cheers echoing off the crystal chandeliers. The program's reach didn't stop at the Grand Plaza. Other hotels in the chain called, asking for guidance. Zoe and Williams traveled to properties in Atlanta, Chicago, Los Angeles each, visit planting seeds for the same transformation. At each site, they met people who'd been waiting years for a chance. One evening, after a whirlwind of speeches and interviews, Zoe sat at her office desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a postcard from Amsterdam, a faded photo of her mother as a young woman, and a crisp envelope marked Foundation Grant Approval. She ran her thumb over the envelope, remembering late nights listening to her mother's advice. "No one can see your worth for you, Zoe, but if you get through the door, don't let it close behind you." She announced the news the next morning. A new scholarship fund for hotel employees and their children, aimed at supporting degrees in hospitality, languages, and international relations. The first recipient was the daughter of a housekeeper, a quiet girl who dreamed of being the general manager one day. That afternoon, the hotel buzzed with excitement as the announcement rippled through the staff. Zoe made her way to the staff lounge, where she found the new IT supervisor, a former bellhop, helping the executive chef's assistant troubleshoot a booking system. A group of young trainees, hired through the program, clustered nearby, rehearsing greetings in Japanese and Portuguese. As she watched, Zoe felt a deep and unfamiliar contentment settle over her. It wasn't pride exactly. It was the recognition that change, once unthinkable, was now normal. Not everyone landed on their feet. The investigation into past discrimination and fraud was thorough. Richards, after a disciplinary process, accepted a transfer to a much smaller hotel in California, managing laundry and maintenance. Her days of power and silent sabotage over Whitmore's name became a cautionary tale in the industry. No major hotel chain would touch him. His niece, Ashley, was required to return overpaid fees and entered a formal language training program, this time as a true student. But the story of their fall was a footnote compared to the dozens whose lives had changed for the better. Jennifer, the former receptionist, now led the Diversity Ambassadors program. The night auditor, once ignored, became the hotel's compliance officer. A chef from Ghana, overlooked for years, was now responsible for the hotel's multicultural culinary events. Zoe was invited to panel discussions at universities, spoke at diversity conferences, and appeared in articles for industry magazines. Her story, once a secret pain, became a beacon for others, proof that silent endurance could, when paired with courage and support, turn the tide. One afternoon, she received a call from a journalist with a European travel magazine. "Ms. Johnson, you're being called the architect of a hospitality revolution. Do you see yourself that way?" She laughed. "I see myself as someone who got tired of watching doors close. It was never just about me. If I'm building anything, it's a place where no one's talent is invisible." As summer neared, the hotel's annual staff party spilled onto the rooftop garden. There was food from every continent, music from every decade, and laughter that bounced off the walls and into the open night. Zoe found herself by the edge, looking out over Manhattan's rivers of light. Williams joined her, glasses in hand. "Think you'll take the professorship?" Williams asked. Zoe smiled, considering. "Maybe, or maybe I'll stay and build more here. Maybe I'll do both." Williams nodded. "You know, you've started something you can't stop. This place will never go back to the way it was." Zoe looked at her friend and new partner in change, feeling the truth of it settle around her like a promise. "I wouldn't want it to," she said. Later, as the music faded and the stars pressed close, Zoe stood in the quiet lobby, alone. She touched the plaque beside the elevator, her name now carved in brass. She thought of the past, the nights of loneliness, the sting of humiliation, the quiet hope that something better might be possible. And she thought of the future, the faces she saw every day, each one a story rewritten. The children of employees dreaming bigger, because someone had opened the door a little wider. Zoe closed her eyes and let gratitude and resolve wash through her. Justice, she knew now, wasn't just punishing those who blocked the way. True justice was building a world where everyone's gifts could be seen, valued, and shared. She picked up her phone, dialing her mother's number still memorized, even though her mother was gone. The message went to voicemail. She spoke anyway, voice steady and bright. "I did it, Mama, and I'll keep the door open for all the ones coming after me." In the heart of Manhattan, where grey once ruled, the light of possibility was real and it belonged to everyone. If you reached the end, comment the word unseen, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with friends and family.